You don't need to come tonight. Mom doesn't want to see you here. This was a text from my husband, sent on the eve of Christmas, at my mother-in-law's house. I replied curtly, "Understood, dear." They thought I would swallow this humiliation, that I would once again wipe away my tears and remain silent, as I had done 100 times before. They were mistaken, my dears. I decided to make them bitterly regret it. I blocked all the cards they considered theirs and launched such a legal carousel that the ground slipped from under their feet. An hour later, they were calling me like scalded cats. But first things first. Before we continue, please tell me where you're from and how old you are. I'd be interested to know who's with me right now. Happy listening. 4 months ago, Kevin came home with that familiar expression. I knew it by heart. Eyebrows furrowed, corners of his lips tragically downturned, the look of a beaten dog, a classic. He sat opposite me in the kitchen, nervously crumpling a napkin, sighing so heavily it was as if the world was collapsing. Then he squeezed out, "Jenny, we need to talk about Mom." I put down my tablet with the quarterly report. In 2 years of marriage, I had memorized this play down to the last line. Now it would be something about Mommy, who did so much for me, and I'm so ashamed that I can't make her happy. You know, she always dreamed of a proper house. Not in this cramped apartment in the tractor factory district, where the ceilings feel oppressive and the neighbors snore through the walls, but a real house with a garden and a porch, so she can finally live comfortably in her old age. The word proper in the mouths of my husband and his precious mother had long ceased to deceive me. When they said proper car, they meant a German business-class sedan. Proper vacation meant Cancun, 5 stars, all-inclusive, a room with an ocean view. And a proper house in their understanding surely meant something with columns, wrought iron fences, and preferably a fountain in the yard. She's already found a place. In the historic district, not far from the waterfront. I almost choked on my tea. The historic district of Charleston, South Carolina is no joke. A square foot there costs as much as my monthly salary during my first year of work, back when I was a nobody, just a girl with ambitions and an empty wallet. Kevin, do you even realize how much money that is? Our company is expanding. We're launching a new production line. Every penny counts. I know. He reached for my hand and squeezed my fingers. His eyes were moist, his voice trembling. A melodramatic actor, honestly. But it's Mom. She's done so much for me. And I'm her only son. I can't even fulfill her dream. I'm ashamed, Jenny. Truly ashamed. There it was, the main weapon, guilt. Kevin wielded it masterfully, like a virtuoso violinist. Brenda never liked me from our first meeting. I understood that immediately by how she scrutinized my clothes from head to toe, by how she pursed her lips when she heard about my business. Just an ordinary woman who got lucky. I once overheard her whisper from the kitchen. She genuinely believed that since her precious son married a woman with money, that money automatically became family money, meaning hers. But I loved Kevin, or thought I did. Now I couldn't tell, and I agreed. The following weeks turned into an endless marathon. I rushed between the office and the real estate agency, gathered documents for the mortgage, haggled with the bank for every 0.1%. The down payment, almost $500,000, came from my personal account. Kevin and Brenda only showed up for the glamorous moments, signing a paper, choosing wallpaper, taking photos in front of their new home. My mother-in-law never once, not a single time, asked how I was feeling, never inquired if it was convenient for me to be torn between work and her whims. Only, when will the renovation be finished? Why is it taking so long? And who's organizing the housewarming party? Everything needs to be done properly, so we're not ashamed in front of people. I felt like an ATM with legs. Approach, press a button, money comes out, no need to say thank you. The housewarming planning happened entirely without me. I only received bills. A lavish banquet with caviar and fine wine for $30,000, flowers from a high-end New York florist for $8,000, invitations on thick paper with gold embossing for another $3,000. I transferred the money silently, clenching my teeth until my jaw ached. The evening before the celebration, I returned home to find my husband and his mother discussing fabric samples for furniture covers. Kevin greeted me strangely, as if I weren't his wife but a casual guest who had dropped in at an inconvenient time. Brenda didn't even lift her eyes. I transferred the last payment for the house, I said, sinking into a chair. $15 million. Now it's fully paid off. All that's left is to wait for the registration with the county. My mother-in-law gave a short nod, as if accepting something obvious. Well, that's what you were supposed to do. No thank you, no smile, not even a nod in my direction. Kevin remained silent, and I felt something sharp pierce my ribs. Not physically, but just as painful. Jenny, you must be tired, my husband said softly. Go rest. We'll handle these small details. It was a way to get me out of the room. I got up and went to the bedroom, feeling like the biggest idiot on the face of the earth. What a fool I was, trying to buy the recognition of people who couldn't care less about me. I left the door slightly ajar, catching my breath, and then I heard Kevin's voice. He was on the phone. Brenda must have left. Yes, Mom, our plan is still on. There was a pause, then he continued. You know what to do next. It was as if I'd been doused with ice water. What plan? What did next mean? I stood by the door for several minutes but heard nothing else. Only this ominous premonition, heavy as a stone, settled somewhere beneath my ribs and remained there all night. In the morning, Kevin left early, giving me no chance to question him. I'm helping Mom with preparations. You go to work. Then you'll come. Dress beautifully. You're our honored guest, after all. An honored guest who knows nothing about the celebration and isn't involved in the preparations but just pays. I swallowed the bitterness and nodded. All day at work, I couldn't concentrate. Numbers blurred before my eyes. The financial director's words reached me as if through cotton. At 4 p.m., I gave up and went home. I called Kevin to find out what time he would pick me up and if we needed to coordinate outfits. Rings, rings, rings. He didn't pick up. I texted on Telegram. Message read, 2 green check marks. No reply. Then I called my mother-in-law. The phone rang twice, and then silence. I hung up, dialed again, straight to voicemail. Did she block me? I tried to convince myself it was an accident. An elderly woman pressed the wrong button. It happens, but inside, everything clenched with a primal sense of impending disaster. At 5 p.m., I finished my shower and sat at my dressing table. A champagne-colored dress with a silk stole hung on the hanger. I wanted to look perfect, so my husband would be proud. On the bed lay a gift. A painting by a local Charleston artist that I had ordered 3 months ago specifically for this day. I applied my makeup with trembling hands and called Kevin again. Voicemail. Brenda's number. Voicemail. I sat motionless, staring at my reflection in the mirror, seeing a beautiful, successful woman who looked pathetic, begging for the attention of those who were indifferent to her, and paying for the luxurious lives of people who wouldn't even pick up the phone. By 5:30 p.m., the housewarming should have already begun, and I was still sitting in the room. The elegant dress on the hanger, the expensive gift on the bed, and an idiot in front of the mirror. Enough, I texted my husband. Kevin, I'm ready. I'm heading out. Sent. Gray check marks. A minute passed, then 5. Silence. Exactly at 5:45 p.m., my phone vibrated. A new message from my husband. You don't need to come tonight. Mom doesn't want to see you here. I read it 3 times. The words didn't make sense in my head, as if they were written in an unfamiliar language. The phone slipped from my fingers and fell onto my lap. For a few seconds, I sat before the mirror with empty eyes. The dress on the hanger seemed to mock me. The gift on the bed, a monument to my naivety. My chest burned as if boiling water had been poured into it. And then, click. As if something clicked into place in a mechanism that had long been malfunctioning. Kevin's phone call. Our plan is still on. There it was. The plan. Squeeze every last drop out of the silly wife, pay for the house and the banquet, and then discreetly push her aside. The house is bought, the party paid for, the daughter-in-law is no longer needed. The ATM is free. Next customer. Memories flooded back. A business trip to New York that I canceled because Brenda felt a little ill and wanted to show off her caring daughter-in-law to her neighbors. The losses from Kevin's failed coffee shop, which I covered from the company's reserve fund, and no gratitude, only complaints that I should have invested more. Brenda's sarcastic remarks, too tough, too business-minded, forgot her feminine duty. And the most painful, hints about infertility, reproaches about the lack of grandchildren. We've only been married 2 years, for crying out loud. Tears began to gather in the corners of my eyes. One more second and I'd burst into tears like a little girl. But when I looked at my reflection, something changed. The tears froze at the edge of my eyelids. Instead of pain, cold, clear rage flowed through my veins, like liquid nitrogen. I was no longer a weakling mourning her fate. I was Eugenia Reynolds, who built a business from scratch, who started in a rented room with one sewing machine and rose to own a manufacturing company, and who negotiated with business sharks without blinking. Today, I would make the most difficult and the easiest decision of my life. I was not a victim. I was an investor who realized she had invested in a dud, and it was time to cut losses. I picked up the phone, my fingers no longer trembled. I reread my husband's message, not with pain but with disgust, like reading a scam ad. A cold smirk touched my lips. "Understood, dear," I sent. "Let him rejoice. Let him think his wife had bent to his will again." I put down my personal phone and took out my work phone. Black, heavy, filled with contacts of serious people. My first call was to Mr. Johnson at the bank. He had managed my accounts for 5 years and knew me inside out. "Mr. Johnson, good evening. Reynolds here. Urgent matter." My voice sounded like steel and ice. There were no emotions on my face. "Listening, Miss Reynolds. First, block all additional cards I issued to my husband and mother-in-law from my account immediately. Yes, all 3. Zero out the limits." "One moment. Done. Anything else?" "Second, regarding the mortgage agreement for the house in the historic district. The deed of ownership hasn't been registered with the county yet, correct?" "Let me check. Yes, documents have been filed, but registration is not complete." "Excellent. I, as the sole payer and borrower, withdraw my consent for the registration of ownership in Brenda's name. Prepare a letter to the county recorder's office to suspend the registration. Reason: dispute over title." He paused, then asked, "Miss Reynolds, are you sure? This is a serious step." "Absolutely sure. And third, prepare a statement of all my payments for this property. I'll need it for my lawyer tomorrow morning." "Will do. Anything else?" "That's all for now. Thank you." The second call was to the developer. "Here," I slightly changed my tone to a worried one. "Mr. Peterson, good evening. Reynolds regarding the property on Main Street. I have an emergency. It turns out I was misled about the final owner. I, as the payer, withdraw my consent for the transfer of the property. My lawyer will contact you tomorrow to resolve this. For now, please send a representative to document the condition of the property. There's an event there tonight, and I don't want to be responsible for any potential damage." Mr. Peterson sounded concerned. "A major buyer is nervous. That's bad for reputation. Miss Reynolds, we'll send a manager immediately." The third call was to Tim, the head of facilities at my company. "Tim, listen up. The company car assigned to Kevin, the black Mercedes. Pick it up tomorrow at 9 a.m. It's on the company's balance sheet. Documents are in order. And tell HR, Kevin Miller is on unpaid leave starting tomorrow. Have them prepare the order. Got it." 3 calls, 40 minutes. In that time, I pulled the chair out from under the lavish life Kevin and his mother were planning to live at my expense. I stood up, took off my robe, and went to the bathroom. I filled the tub with hot water, added some aromatic bath salts. I deserved a rest. Meanwhile, at Brenda's house, joy reigned. New crystal chandeliers sparkled. Lilies and white roses filled every corner with fragrance. Classical music flowed from the speakers. Guests laughed and clinked champagne glasses. My mother-in-law basked in the glow of glory. A custom-made dress embroidered with sequins, a salon hairstyle. Her face radiated triumph. "What a mansion," her friends gushed. "It's not a house, it's a palace." "It's all my Kevin," Brenda modestly simpered. "A golden son knows how to please his mother. If they remembered me at all, it was in passing and not kindly. Where's the daughter-in-law? Jenny? Oh, she's always stuck at her work, so busy. But Kevin is the brains. She wouldn't have achieved anything without him." Kevin, at that moment, felt like a king. He glanced at his watch, remembered my submissive, understood, and mentally patted himself on the back. "Good job, Kevin." Pleased Mom put the wife in her place. "Everything's under control." And then the celebration cracked. The catering representative approached my husband. "Mr. Miller, according to the contract, the second half of the sum needs to be paid during the event." Kevin nonchalantly pulled out his gold, premium card with a huge limit and swiped it at the terminal. Transaction declined. "Bad connection," he grumbled. "Try again." Card blocked. Then Kevin pulled out a second, black status card. Card blocked. "What the hell?" His voice cracked, and guests began to turn their heads. The catering representative turned icy. "We have strict rules. Without payment, service stops. 30 minutes to resolve the issue, or we shut down the banquet." Brenda rushed over. "What happened? Why aren't you paying? Where's your Jenny? And then, as if on cue, the music stopped. 3 men in suits, serious and official, appeared in the doorway. The developer's representative walked in front. Good evening. I apologize for the intrusion. I'm looking for Brenda Miller and Kevin Miller. He approached, ignoring the whispers of the guests. A statement has been received from Eugenia Reynolds, the sole payer for this property. She is withdrawing consent for the registration of ownership. Registration with the county recorder's office is suspended pending clarification of circumstances. We ask you to refrain from using the property. Brenda turned pale. What do you mean, suspended? The house is paid for. Paid for, yes. But the deed of ownership has not been formally registered. Legally, the property belongs to the developer. The payer has declared a dispute. The silence was so thick you could hear water dripping from a faucet somewhere. Guests began exchanging glances. Someone chuckled. Someone reached for their phone to record it for history. Brenda's friends, who moments ago had been admiring the palace, now looked on with thinly veiled schadenfreude. We recommend negotiating with the payer, the representative concluded. Perhaps this is a misunderstanding. Kevin grabbed his phone and quickly dialed my number, but all he heard was ringing and then silence. Then he tried again. Again. Silence. In the warm bath, I watched my vibrating phone on the shelf. They called in turn. First my husband, then my mother-in-law, then my husband again, and my mother-in-law. I just smiled, closed my eyes, and sank deeper into the fragrant water. Let them sweat. Meanwhile, the catering staff began to pack up. Waiters cleared dishes. Caviar appetizers disappeared on trolleys, and floral arrangements were already being carried out of the hall. Hey, where are you going? This is Brenda shrieked. The service hasn't been paid for. We're taking our equipment. The guests scattered like cockroaches when the light is turned on. One of Brenda's friends, already heading out the door, leaned over to another friend and whispered, I told you, you can't get far on someone else's money. They offended the daughter-in-law, and now they've got what's coming to them. An hour later, I emerged from the bath in soft pajamas with a towel on my head. I picked up my phone and saw dozens of hysterical messages from my husband. Jenny, answer. What are you doing? Mom's going to end up in the hospital because of you. Call me back immediately. I wrote a single reply. What happened, dear? You yourself said Mom didn't want to see me there, and sent it. Blue checkmarks appeared instantly. On the dark street, Kevin and his mother read that message, huddled over the phone. And it dawned on them. This wasn't a bank glitch or a developer's mistake. This was revenge. Cold, calculated, perfectly executed. They hadn't offended a submissive fool. They had awakened a she-wolf. Half an hour later, they arrived at my apartment. Their access card didn't work. The concierge politely informed them that it had been deactivated at the owner's request. Kevin was forced to call the intercom and asked to be let into the apartment he used to consider his own. I allowed them to come up. When they entered, the contrast was striking. I sat on the couch with a cup of tea, calm, refreshed, in my loungewear, while they were disheveled, sweaty, with distorted faces. Please sit, I said in an even voice. Let's talk, Brenda exploded. Talk? You made a laughingstock of us. And now you want to talk? And who made a laughingstock of whom? I looked her in the eyes. I worked like a dog to buy you that house. And you wouldn't even let me across the threshold. Your party, paid for with my money, but without me. Original, to say the least. Kevin tried to turn on the charm. Jenny, I'm an idiot, I admit it. Mom made me send that message. You know her temper. Let's cancel everything. Call the bank. Say it was a mistake. I looked at him, searching for something of the man I once loved, but found nothing but fear and calculation. Cancel? And what is there to cancel, Kevin? You wrote the truth. Your plan almost worked. Squeeze money out of me and then throw me out. Only you forgot one thing. The money is mine, and the house is mine too. Until I sign the transfer documents, it belongs to me. I stood up and walked to the door. 2 large suitcases stood there. These are your things. I packed them. Clothes, watches, various trinkets. Kevin stared at the suitcases as if he'd seen his own coffin. You're kicking me out? Not kicking out. Returning you to where I found you. This apartment is mine, and it was bought 2 years before we met, with my money, earned by my labor. And I'm not going to share it with a man who made plans behind my back. My mother-in-law lunged at me. You snake! I intercepted her arm and said, Don't. In my house, my rules. Either leave on your own, or I'll call security. They left with their suitcases, still in their formal party clothes, in the middle of the night. Kevin kept banging on the door, shouting something about let's talk, but I no longer listened. They had nowhere to go. A hotel? Cards blocked. No cash. All that remained was Brenda's old apartment in the tractor factory district. That same cramped apartment she had so disdainfully dismissed. They arrived there after midnight. The apartment was empty, smelled of dampness, and was covered in dust. My mother-in-law, in her sequin dress, stood in the middle of this squalor, trembling, either from cold or rage. "It's all your fault, Kevin," she hissed. "You fool, you couldn't keep your woman in line." "Me?" he flared up. "You told me to send that message. You said, I don't want to see her." They squabbled in the dusty room until morning and slept in different places, filled with mutual hatred. At 9 a.m. the next morning, they came for the Mercedes. Kevin rushed into the yard in his boxers and t-shirt, but the car was already being loaded onto a tow truck. It was company property. Documents were in order. Everything legal. By 11, a courier delivered papers. For Brenda, a notice of suspension of ownership registration, and for Kevin, a divorce petition and a claim for division of property. The property, however, was mostly mine. The apartment, cars, business, all acquired before marriage. And Kevin's contribution to the family pot consisted of losses from failed projects that I covered out of my own pocket. He sat on the floor of the shabby kitchen and stared at the papers with empty eyes. "It's over. She destroyed me." Brenda decided to attack from another flank. A few days later, they showed up at my office, both in modest clothes with somber faces. My mother-in-law, seeing me in the lobby, dropped to her knees. "Jeannie, my darling, forgive this old fool. The devil got into me." A one-woman show. Tears, lamentations, grabbing my hands. I watched this performance with disgusted interest, like a cockroach trying to pretend to be a butterfly. "Please call security," I told my secretary. "Jeannie, I'm like a mother to you." "You are not my mother. My mother taught me honesty and dignity. You only wanted my money." Security guards took Brenda by the arms. She instantly stopped crying, her face contorted with anger, her eyes flashed. "You'll regret this, Jeannie. You'll be alone. No one will want you." I didn't turn around, just walked to the elevator, thinking about the upcoming meeting. A year passed. For Kevin and his mother, it was a year of downfall. Rumors of the disastrous housewarming spread throughout Charleston. Brenda's former friends now whispered behind her back. "Remember how she bragged? A palace of a house, a golden sun? And where is that palace now?" My mother-in-law locked herself in her apartment, barely going out. Shame gnawed at her from within. Her health deteriorated, blood pressure fluctuated, blood sugar was unstable. Kevin tried to find work. The position of marketing director at my company turned out to be a sham. He never actually did anything. In job interviews, this became apparent instantly. "Mr. Miller, you indicated a 200% increase in exports. Please tell us about your strategy." "Well, we worked hard, kept an eye on trends." "Understood. We'll be in touch." But no one ever got in touch. After dozens of rejections, he became a taxi driver. A rented car, 1-2-hour shifts, meager earnings. He came home exhausted, where his mother awaited with complaints. "Where's the money for medicine? Are you even working, or just counting crows?" "I am working. From morning till night, I'm behind the wheel. But it's barely enough for ramen." They lived together and hated each other. Each blamed the other for their downfall. One day, Kevin, exhausted after a shift, pulled over and checked his phone. An interview popped up in his feed, my face on the screen. I looked different, confident, calm, somehow glowing from within. The host said, "Eugenia Reynolds, you're called Businesswoman of the Year. The biggest contract with the Italians, a new line of eco-friendly clothing, production expansion. How do you do it?" I smiled from the screen. The secret is simple. Sometimes, to move forward, you need to throw off excess baggage, get rid of what drags you down, and focus on what's important. Kevin turned off his phone. Throw off excess baggage. He was that baggage, the trash I had removed from my life. He punched the steering wheel and said to himself, "Fool, idiot." I had a diamond in my hands, and I traded it for an empty house. The divorce was finalized in 2 months. In court, Kevin tried to fight for a share of the business. His lawyer advised against it. All the documents were ironclad. The company was founded before marriage. The apartment bought before marriage. The cars registered to the firm. There was nothing to divide. He left court empty-handed. No wife, no money, no prospects. A year after that ill-fated housewarming, I was invited to the opening of a children's playground that I had sponsored last spring. I hadn't gotten around to attending the official ceremony. Well, I thought, I'll go, cut the ribbon, take some photos for the report, and go home. I arrived, and oh my goodness! The squeals were so loud it was like a flock of seagulls descending on a fish market. Swings creaked, the merry-go-round spun. Some little kid had already managed to get ice cream all over himself, the bench, and someone's grandmother. The school principal gave a speech about the social responsibility of business and the moral education of the younger generation, and I watched a red-haired boy, about 6, trying to climb the slide from the bottom up, and I couldn't stop smiling. This is it, I thought. This is what it was all for. Not for crystal chandeliers and gold invitations, but for this dirty-faced redhead who was about to fall and cry. But then he'd climb again because the slide wasn't going anywhere, and he could try again tomorrow. Almost at the same time, on the other side of Charleston, a queue of about 40 people formed outside a building with a sign that read, Community Kitchen. It moved very slowly because something was wrong with the serving inside. Why are we stopped? Someone shouted from the back of the line. The ladle broke, came the reply. Brenda is serving with a mug. Oh my goodness, we'll be here until evening. Then don't stand, go home, make some stew. Easy for you to say. I would, if I had anything to make it with. Among the waiting, roughly in the middle, stood a thin woman in a once decent coat. The sleeves were frayed, and a button hung by a thread. Beside her stood a man in his 40s in a faded jacket. Brenda and Kevin. A year ago, they would have laughed in the face of anyone who told them they would be standing in line for free gruel. Kevin, move forward. Brenda poked her son with her elbow. Where should I move, Mom? That old lady is standing there. Should I climb on her? The old lady in front turned around and gave him a look that could freeze water. Young man, don't breathe down my neck and don't push. I'm not deaf. I'm not pushing. You are pushing, I can feel it. A man behind chuckled. Listen, buddy, there's a system here. First come, first served. Democracy. Yeah, I get it. I get it, Kevin grumbled. Brenda tugged his sleeve and hissed. This is all your fault, by the way. If you had behaved properly with Jeannie, we'd be sitting in a restaurant now, not stuck here. Mom, not again? What not again? I'm telling the truth. You had a woman with money. And where is she now? On TV. And we're standing here for soup. But you told her to write that she shouldn't come. I told her? You'd blame the weather next. You're always making excuses. The old lady in front turned again. You two should keep it down. People are around. Sorry, Kevin said automatically. Sorry, Brenda mimicked. You've been apologizing your whole life. That's why we live like paupers. Kevin looked at his mother and suddenly said quietly, but so that she stopped short. Enough. Do you hear? Just enough. Brenda opened her mouth. In 70 years, she had learned to respond to any remark, but suddenly she fell silent. She caught her reflection in the murky window of the soup kitchen and didn't immediately recognize herself. A coat with a missing button. A queue for free soup. While the daughter-in-law she had so diligently driven away was opening children's playgrounds and giving interviews. Mom, why are you frozen? Kevin pulled her by the elbow. Move, the line's moving. Brenda blinked, straightened up, and raised her chin. Don't pull me. I know how. And ask Brenda for extra. She remembers me. I lived in the same building as her sister. Some people never change, even in a queue for gruel. In the evening, I walked along the waterfront. The same one that stretches along the Ashley River from the marina to the Battery Park. Tourists come here for the historic homes and charm, but locals know the true soul of the city is here, down by the water, especially at sunset, when the sun dips behind the river and it turns either golden or copper, reflecting all that impossible, poignant light. I stopped at a gazebo across from the Mayflower restaurant, the very one where Kevin and I celebrated our wedding anniversary. Funny. Now it doesn't even hurt to remember. Just a fact from a past life, like reading about someone else. An elderly couple passed by. He was leading her by the arm, and she was laughing at something, the wind ruffling her gray hair. They were both at least 70. They walked slowly, in no hurry, and they seemed so good together that it was enviable just to watch. This is what life is worth living for, I thought. Not for houses with columns and housewarmings with caviar, but to walk along the waterfront like this at 70, holding hands and laughing at some nonsense. Miss Reynolds, my assistant, Katie, caught up to me, out of breath. The car is waiting. Interview in an hour, and you're strolling around here. We've been looking for you all over the waterfront. Coming, coming, I said, but stood for another minute, looking at the water. Chekhov once wrote that if you want to be happy, be happy. He wrote it simply, like a recipe for borscht. I used to think, what foolishness. Does happiness really depend on us? But now I understand. It depends. Not on circumstances, not on a husband, not on a mother-in-law, but on the decision you make every day. To carry grudges or let them go, to live in the past or build the future, to wait for others to value you or to decide your own worth. Did I forgive them? Probably yes. Not in the sense that I forgot everything and am ready to embrace them, but in the sense that I stopped thinking about it. Anger is a heavy thing. Carrying it with you is like lugging a kettlebell in your bag. You get used to it, but your back still aches. I threw my kettlebell away somewhere between the second and third month after the divorce. The relief was indescribable. As I walked to the car, I suddenly remembered my grandmother. She always used to say, "Jeannie, don't be afraid to lose, be afraid not to find." I didn't understand then, but now I do. I lost a husband. I lost a mother-in-law. I lost 5 years of my life and a lot of money on other people's desires. And I found myself. It sounds like a cheap calendar with quotes, but it's true. My real home is not that mansion in the historic district that caused all the fuss. My home is myself. My mind, my decisions, my right to wake up in the morning and know that this day belongs to me. No one will tell me, you must anymore. Only, I will choose what I want. I got into the car and adjusted my scarf. The driver pulled away. An evening Charleston flowed past the window. The waterfront gazebos, the historic customs house with its clock, the silhouette of the Ravenel Bridge, visible from almost anywhere in the city. Everyone ultimately gets what they choose. This is what I chose.